She slept alone in the forbidden forest, unaware the Alpha King watched her all night. The sun was dipping below the jagged horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gold. In the distance, the forbidden forest stretched like a living shadow, its twisted branches clawing at the evening light. Villagers often spoke of it in whispers, telling stories of spirits and curses that lingered among its ancient trees. Few dared to enter and fewer still ever returned. Yet there was Leora, moving through the underbrush with careful, deliberate steps. Her cloak, a muted gray, blended with the mist that clung low to the forest floor. She carried only a small satchel of provisions, and the stubborn determination that had brought her this far. Exiled from her family for reasons she dared not speak aloud, Leora had no choice but to seek refuge in the forest, alone, where no eyes could judge her and no whispers could reach her ears. Her heart thudded with every snap of twig beneath her boots. Every shadow seemed to move, yet she pressed forward. There was a strange pull here, as though the forest itself wanted her to walk its paths, to uncover secrets hidden for centuries. She did not know why she felt it, only that she could not resist. Far above, on a jagged cliff that overlooked the forest, a pair of eyes glimmered like polished obsidian. Kalen, the Alpha King, watched her with an intensity that had become second nature to him. His dominion stretched across the northern lands, ruled with a careful balance of fear and respect. Few dared defy him, and fewer still had survived the night in his forests without falling to its unseen dangers. Yet here was this human girl, bold and fragile, stepping into his territory with the innocence and recklessness of one who did not yet understand the world she had entered. Kalen had been observing her since she crossed the forest edge. He could feel her emotions, hear the rapid beat of her heart, sense her exhaustion and quiet determination. Something about her presence stirred a part of him he had long buried: curiosity, interest, something closer to longing. He had ruled for centuries, bound by a power few could comprehend, yet never had anyone moved him like this. Leora pressed on, her fingers brushing against the damp leaves. The forest seemed alive around her, whispering in voices only half heard. The mist thickened, curling around her ankles and rising like a ghostly tide. She paused, scanning the darkness ahead, heart tightening. There was a story here, she felt it, an unspoken one, waiting for her to stumble upon it. The first chill of night brushed her neck, and she wrapped her cloak tighter around her shoulders. Her feet had carried her far, and she realized she had not yet found a place to rest. She needed a shelter, a hollow in the roots of some ancient tree, or perhaps a natural alcove where the wind would not bite. She stumbled upon a small clearing, moonlight spilling in through the gaps in the branches above. It would have to do. As she set down her satchel and knelt to arrange a small fire from dry twigs, a strange silence fell over the forest. The usual chorus of birds and insects ceased, replaced by a hush that felt almost deliberate. Leora's instincts screamed at her, warning of unseen eyes, of things that watched and waited. She shook her head, trying to quiet her imagination. "It's just the forest," she murmured to herself. "I am safe here. I have to be." But Kalen was closer than she knew. From the shadows of the trees, he observed every motion, every flicker of doubt across her face. His presence was hidden, silent as the night itself. He did not intervene, not yet. To do so would break the fragile balance between them. Instead, he remained a shadow, moving like smoke, ensuring that no creature of the forest dared come near. Leora settled by the small fire, letting the warmth seep into her chilled bones. She stared into the flickering flames, memories of her family and the betrayal that had cast her out flickering like sparks. She had been taught to obey, to bend to the will of those above her, yet now she was free, or as free as a person could be when the world seemed determined to punish them. Her hands trembled, though not entirely from cold. As night deepened, the mist thickened further, curling around her like a soft, suffocating blanket. She felt a presence, though she could not see it. Her senses screamed, telling her she was not alone. The hairs along her arms stood on end. She froze, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. And yet, she did not run. Part of her wanted to confront it, to know if the stories of spirits and cursed guardians were true. She whispered into the night, "Who's there?" Her voice was small, swallowed by the forest, yet somehow Kalen heard it, not with his ears but with a deeper sense, a perception of the forest itself. Kalen stepped closer, but he did not enter the firelight. He could have, easily, yet he held back. He wanted to see her as she truly was, without fear tainting her expression. And in that hesitation, he recognized a truth he had long denied. He did not only want to protect her. He wanted to understand her, to feel the fragile warmth that radiated from someone unbound by centuries of power or solitude. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. A low growl resonated through the trees, unnatural and throbbing with malice. Leora's heart leapt into her throat, and she scrambled backward, eyes wide. Shadows shifted, coiling around tree trunks and roots as if alive. She realized she had made a mistake. This part of the forest did not forgive intrusion. Kalen's pulse quickened. He had expected danger, but the intensity of it surprised him. He saw the shadowed form of a creature slinking through the mist, neither fully beast nor fully spirit. Its eyes glowed with a hunger that seemed almost intelligent. Leora, unaware of his presence, was defenseless. His instincts screamed for him to move, to act, to strike down the threat before it reached her. And yet, he stayed hidden, observing. There was a fascination in watching her face, in seeing the flicker of fear and defiance. She did not scream, did not flail. She simply tried to steady herself, her hands raised slightly, ready to defend against what she could not name. Kalen felt an unfamiliar tug in his chest. A desire to protect, yes, but also to let her fight, to see the courage he did not expect from someone so small and mortal. The creature crept closer, each movement deliberate. Its growl deepened, vibrating through the mist like a living drum. Leora's mind raced, recalling old tales, superstitions, and lessons from childhood. She clutched a fallen branch, raising it defensively, but the creature's strength far exceeded hers. At that precise moment, Kalen moved. Not into the firelight, not enough for her to see him, but close enough to intervene. With a subtle wave of his hand, he summoned a gust of wind that struck the creature, sending it tumbling backward. The shadow hissed, recoiling as if burned by some invisible flame. Kalen watched, heart pounding, as the creature retreated into the forest, vanishing into the swirling mist. Leora, trembling and wide-eyed, did not see him. She only saw the creature disappear, leaving her alone in the clearing once more. Relief washed over her, mingled with awe and confusion. Had the forest itself defended her? Or had the stories been true, that some guardian watched over the lost, the exiled, the brave? Kalen melted back into the shadows, allowing her to believe the first. He lingered, watching as she curled closer to the fire, shaking from adrenaline and cold. There was a purity to her exhaustion, a vulnerability that made him question everything he had built around himself. For centuries, he had ruled with authority and fear. Tonight, he realized that sometimes power meant little in the face of another soul's courage. The moon rose higher, casting silver threads through the branches, and the forest seemed to hum quietly, as if acknowledging the presence of both the girl and the king who had watched her. Leora's eyes fluttered shut, fatigue finally overtaking vigilance. She fell into a restless sleep, unaware that she had not been alone, and that the eyes of the Alpha King had followed her every breath. Kalen remained until the first hints of dawn touched the forest. Only when the mist thinned and the shadows began to retreat did he turn away, disappearing into the cliffs above. His mind was not on strategy, nor on the politics that demanded his attention. It was on the girl who had slept alone in the forbidden forest, unaware that someone watched over her all night. And for the first time in centuries, Kalen felt a question he could not ignore. Who was this mortal, and why had she stirred something within him that no crown, no curse, no power had ever touched? The forest sighed around him, ancient and patient. The night had passed, but the story was only beginning. The first light of dawn filtered through the thick canopy of the forbidden forest, casting pale beams that danced across the mist. Leora stirred, the warmth of her small fire long extinguished. Her body ached from the cold night, and her mind was heavy with dreams she could not fully remember. Shadows of flickering figures, whispers, and distant eyes haunted her sleep, leaving a sense of unease that clung to her like the morning fog. She rose cautiously, brushing leaves and dew from her cloak. The forest seemed quieter than before, as if it had paused to observe her every motion. Leora had always known the forest held secrets, but she had never imagined they would follow her into waking hours. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear alone, but from the realization that she was utterly alone in a place where survival required vigilance at every step. Somewhere above the treetops, perched on his jagged cliff, Kalen, the Alpha King, watched her again. Though his dark eyes were fixed on her form, his mind was restless. He had never been so intrigued by a mortal before. Centuries of ruling, of commanding loyalty through fear and respect, had taught him that attachment was weakness. And yet the way Leora moved, careful, deliberate, courageous despite her fragility, stirred something he had buried deep within himself. Kalen's dominion stretched far across the northern lands, a kingdom carved out of ice, stone, and ancient magic. His subjects obeyed him with a mixture of reverence and dread, and for good reason. He could sense their fears, their desires, and punish transgressions with subtle, terrifying precision. But no power he held compared to the strange fascination he felt for the mortal girl wandering alone in his forests. Leora took her first cautious steps toward the forest path, unsure of where she would go next. Villages lay beyond the forest, but she feared returning. Rumors of spies and enemies from her family reached even the most remote settlements. The forest, for all its danger, offered a kind of sanctuary, as twisted and strange as it was. She felt a pull deeper into the trees, toward a place that called to her with whispers she could almost understand. Kalen followed silently, moving with the precision of a shadow. He did not interfere yet, not wanting to frighten her. But his senses stretched through the mist and the wind, protecting her from dangers she could not see. A fox darting through the underbrush, the snap of a branch hinting at some predator, it was all under his watchful eyes. And as the day began, he found himself wondering why a human could matter so much to him. The forest thickened as Leora ventured further, the sunlight filtering through a canopy of ancient oaks and twisted pines. Strange shapes flitted in the mist, glimpses of creatures that belonged to legends and nightmares. She froze at the rustle of leaves, gripping a sturdy branch she had picked up along the way. Her pulse quickened. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. But no answer came, only the soft sigh of wind moving through the trees. Kalen allowed himself a small smile. Her courage, tinged with fear, was unlike anything he had seen in centuries. Mortals were often naive, careless, or easily broken. Leora was none of these. She was bold, unyielding, and against all reason, utterly fascinating. The path twisted and turned, leading her toward a deeper part of the forest she did not recognize. She paused at the edge of a small clearing, where sunlight glinted off a pool of water so still it seemed like liquid glass. Kneeling beside it, she cupped her hands and drank, letting the cold water wake her body and clear her mind. And then she felt it movement beyond the trees, a flicker of shadow, a weight in the air that pressed against her senses. Her instinct screamed that she was not alone. She stood quickly, eyes scanning the forest, but saw nothing. Only the wind, the leaves, the quiet murmurs of the trees. Kalen's presence was closer than ever, though he remained unseen. He could feel her tension, The flicker of fear and defiance intermingled, and it pulled at him in ways that made him uncomfortable. For centuries he had been untouchable, immune to human weakness and temptation. Yet this girl, this mortal wandering through his forests, made him question the distance he had maintained for so long. Suddenly, the forest itself seemed to shift. Branches bent in unnatural angles, and shadows moved as if they were alive. A low growl echoed across the clearing, deeper and more menacing than anything Leora had heard before. She gripped her branch tighter, heart pounding. Kaelin's gaze hardened. The forest was awakening in ways even he had not anticipated. A creature of shadow, born from the curse that lingered here, had sensed Leora's presence. It moved with silent hunger, its eyes glowing like molten gold through the mist. Leora's instinct told her to run, but she could not. Her feet seemed rooted to the ground. From his hidden perch, Kaelin whispered under his breath, a subtle incantation, and the wind shifted, diverting the creature's path. It snarled in frustration but did not flee. Leora barely noticed the change, only sensing that some unseen force had intervened. Her pulse racing, she finally found the courage to speak aloud. "I am not afraid," she said, though her voice betrayed her. "I will not." The branch in her hand snapped as the creature lunged from the shadows. Its form was dark and shifting, almost intangible, yet undeniably real. Leora stumbled backward, fear gripping her, and then felt a sudden rush of wind that sent the shadow crashing into a nearby tree. It hissed, recoiling before disappearing entirely into the mist. Leora fell to her knees, trembling, and looked around wildly. What was that?" she whispered, voice shaking. But there was no answer, only silence, heavy and suffocating. Kaelin moved closer, yet still unseen. He could sense her terror, her courage, her disbelief. She was not just a mortal wandering blindly. She was someone who faced fear with stubborn determination. He realized that his fascination had grown into something deeper. He wanted to protect her, to see her safe, and to understand why her presence stirred long-buried emotions he had thought extinct. Hours passed. Leora found a safe place to rest against a tree, exhaustion weighing heavily upon her. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the forest, trying to understand it, trying to find the line between danger and sanctuary. The wind whispered, branches creaked, and the mist wove around her like a living thing. Kaelin finally stepped closer, careful not to reveal himself. He did not need to, she was safe for now, and his presence alone allowed him to watch without interference. Yet he could not stay hidden forever. Something about her demanded acknowledgement, recognition. She was alive, vibrant, and yet alone in a forest that would not forgive weakness. As evening approached, the forest began to change again. The air grew colder, the shadows longer. Leora's confidence from the morning had faded, replaced by exhaustion and unease. She realized she could not stay here indefinitely, yet leaving felt equally dangerous. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly, each path twisting back on itself, as if mocking her attempts to escape. Kaelin sensed her fear and frustration. He wanted to reach out to guide her, but he hesitated. Their first real meeting would be delicate. He could not risk startling her, not when he had already stirred a connection that neither of them fully understood. Night fell. Leora found a small clearing, with a hollowed tree trunk she could use as shelter. She arranged the branches and leaves around it, making the best of her meager cover. Her mind wandered to the strange events of the day, the creature, the whispers, the inexplicable feelings she could not name. Somewhere, deep in her chest, curiosity burned brighter than fear. She wanted to know more, even if it meant facing danger again. Kaelin remained at a distance, watching her every move. His heart, long hardened by centuries of solitude, felt an unfamiliar tug. He realized that his fascination was no longer idle curiosity. He wanted to know her, not as a mortal he could dominate or control, but as a person, a soul who dared to walk alone in a forest that had claimed many before her. And then, a sound pierced the night. a soft, eerie rustle from deep within the trees. Leora stiffened, listening intently. She was not sure if it was the forest, a creature, or something else entirely. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, yet she stayed, gripping her small branch, ready to defend herself. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. He had sensed the movement before she did, a faint shift in the shadows that spoke of danger. But this time it was different. The forest was alive in a way even he had not expected. Whatever approached was ancient, clever, and relentless. Leora would not survive alone. He took a step forward, careful not to reveal himself, and whispered to the wind, bending it subtly toward her, a silent shield against the unknown. The rustling paused. Leora's breath caught in her throat. She felt the weight of unseen eyes, not all of them hostile, yet not all friendly either. She sank to the ground, exhaustion and fear mingling. The forest around her seemed to lean in closer, as if holding its breath. Somewhere in the shadows, Kaelin waited, knowing that the night ahead would test them both in ways neither could predict. Night had fallen over the forbidden forest, wrapping the twisted trees in a cloak of shadow. The mist curled around roots and rocks like smoke, drifting silently with every subtle movement of the wind. Somewhere deep within the forest, a distant howl echoed, cutting through the quiet and making Leora stiffen. She pressed her back against the trunk of an ancient oak, listening. Every instinct screamed that she was not alone, yet she had already grown accustomed to the feeling of being watched. Her breath came in shallow waves, and her hands clutched the small branch she had kept from earlier in the day. She had wandered further than ever before, drawn by a strange sense of inevitability, as if some force beyond her understanding guided her steps. Every rustle in the underbrush, every whisper of wind through the branches made her heart race, yet she refused to flee. "Why am I here?" she whispered to herself, voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. She did not expect an answer, yet the question lingered, echoing within her like the soft murmurs of the forest. And then she saw it, a faint glow, pale and silver, hovering in the mist like a lantern carried by a ghost. Her pulse quickened. She did not know if it was friend or foe, but something about it drew her forward, step by cautious step. From the shadows above, Kaelin watched her every movement. His dark eyes glimmered with a strange mixture of wariness and fascination. The glow she followed was not of natural origin. It was a fragment of the forest's ancient magic, guiding her deeper, but also testing her resolve. He had always known the forest was alive, but never had he seen a mortal move through it with such determination and courage. He moved silently behind her, a shadow among shadows. Each step he took was calculated, careful not to frighten her, yet ready to intervene should danger strike. He could sense her emotions clearly, her fear, her determination, her curiosity, and they tugged at something deep within him. Centuries of rule had taught him discipline, yet he found himself unprepared for the pull of a mortal spirit. Leora approached the glow, her eyes widening as she saw it hover above a small pool of water. The surface of the pool reflected the moonlight, but it shimmered unnaturally, as if showing more than mere reflections. Tentatively, she knelt beside it, dipping her fingers into the water. A chill ran through her body, but she felt a strange calm, as if the water itself whispered promises she could not fully comprehend. Kaelin stepped closer, his senses alert. The forest was unusually still around her, but he knew that the moment was delicate. He could intervene, reveal himself, and protect her, but doing so too abruptly might frighten her. She was not accustomed to seeing power in its raw form. For centuries he had ruled alone, and now he faced the challenge of approaching someone who could see him not as a king, but as a person. Suddenly the glow flickered, and a shadow moved at the edge of the clearing. Leora froze, heart thundering. The figure was indistinct, shifting between human and beast, its presence menacing. She gripped her branch tighter, preparing for the unknown. Kaelin's instincts flared. He could not allow harm to come to her, not now. With a subtle gesture, he sent a gust of wind that diverted the shadow, sending it lurching backward into the mist. Leora gasped, though she did not see him. The danger had vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving her trembling and questioning what she had just witnessed. "You are brave," a voice said suddenly, deep and resonant, echoing through the clearing. Leora jumped, turning sharply. Before her stood a figure cloaked in shadow, eyes glinting like obsidian in the pale moonlight. She froze, unsure whether to flee or fight. Kalen stepped fully into view, revealing himself for the first time. Tall and imposing, his presence filled the clearing. His dark hair fell over sharp features, and his eyes, though intense, held something she could not quite name, an unexpected gentleness. "I am Kalen," he said softly, though the authority in his voice made her step back instinctively. "I mean you no harm." Leora's eyes narrowed, suspicion mixing with awe. What are you?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her courage. "Why are you here?" "I watch these forests," Kalen said, his gaze steady on her. "And now I watch you." He paused, measuring the effect of his words. "You should not be here alone." "I have no choice," Leora said quietly, lifting her chin. "I cannot return to the villages. My family, they cast me out. I have nowhere else to go." Her words were soft, yet they carried a weight that made Kaelin's chest tighten. He could see her pain, her fear, her defiance. Something inside him shifted. He had spent centuries commanding loyalty, enforcing rules, and maintaining power. And yet, standing before him was someone untouched by politics, someone human and raw, someone who had faced danger and still refused to yield. "You are brave and foolish," Kalen said, a faint shadow of a smile on his lips. "The forest is not forgiving. You should not survive here without guidance." "I can survive," Leora said, though her voice faltered. "I have to." Kalen studied her for a long moment, sensing the depth of her resolve. He could see it in the way she carried herself, the way her eyes searched the shadows without breaking, even when fear pressed against her ribs. He felt an unfamiliar stir of respect, and perhaps something closer to admiration. "Very well," he said finally. "Then you will learn quickly that the forest is not what it seems. There are creatures here that neither you nor I can easily understand, and forces older than any kingdom you know." Leora's gaze sharpened. "Then teach me." Kalen's eyes widened slightly. No mortal had ever dared speak to him so directly. He felt an odd thrill, a mix of challenge and fascination. "Perhaps I will," he said slowly, "but you must promise to listen and to follow guidance, even when it is difficult." "I promise," she said, though uncertainty flickered across her face. The forest seemed to acknowledge this fragile truce. Mist curled around their feet, and the moonlight shimmered across the pool where she had first seen the glow. For the first time, Leora felt a strange sense of safety, tempered by the knowledge that danger was never far away. Kalen's presence was a shield she could not see, yet could somehow feel, a reassurance in the midst of unknown peril. As they spoke, the forest shifted. Leaves rustled unnaturally, and the shadows lengthened, twisting into forms that made the air feel heavier. Leora instinctively took a step closer to Kalen, though she could not explain why. Perhaps it was instinct, or perhaps it was a trust born in the briefest of moments. "You must understand," Kalen said, voice low, "that the forest tests those who enter. Not all threats are visible, not all dangers are straightforward. Courage alone will not save you." "I understand," Leora replied, though doubt lingered in her eyes. "But I cannot turn back." Kalen studied her. He could sense the truth of her words, the courage, the determination, and the quiet despair that had driven her into the forest in the first place. He had been alone for centuries, ruling with power, commanding loyalty, and suppressing all human weakness. And yet standing before her, he felt something new, something fragile stirring that threatened to undermine his centuries of control. The night deepened, and the forest grew colder. Mist swirled around them like living threads, carrying scents and whispers that neither could fully interpret. Leora shivered, and Kalen moved closer, not too close, but close enough that she could feel the subtle warmth of his presence. "You are stronger than I expected," he said quietly. "And yet the forest will not yield easily. It will demand more than courage. It will demand truth from you and from me." Leora's gaze met his, and for the first time she saw something she had not anticipated: vulnerability. Behind the authority, behind the dark presence, there was a man who had known loss, solitude, and centuries of silence. She felt a strange pull, an unspoken connection that made the shadows of the forest seem less threatening and more alive. And then from the depths of the trees, a faint glow appeared again, this one brighter and moving with deliberate intent. Leora froze, recognizing the presence from earlier. Kalen's expression darkened. This was no ordinary test of courage. Something ancient and cunning approached, a force older than the forest itself, drawn by her presence. "You must stay close to me," Kalen said, tone firm but calm. "Whatever comes, you cannot face it alone." Leora nodded, gripping the branch tightly but stepping closer to him. The glow moved closer, revealing a form that shimmered between shapes, sometimes human, sometimes beast. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, and it studied them as carefully as they studied it. Kalen shifted slightly, placing himself subtly between Leora and the approaching figure. "Do not be afraid," he said. "Trust me." The creature hesitated, as if sensing the strength between them. Then, with a sudden burst of motion, it lunged. Kalen's hand moved with lightning speed, summoning a gust of wind that struck the creature, forcing it back. Leora gasped but did not flee. She stayed, standing beside him, feeling a strange courage in the presence of someone who had vowed to protect her. The forest seemed to pulse around them, shadows deepening, mist swirling, as if holding its breath. Kalen's heart thudded, not with fear but with the realization that their fates were now intertwined. He could no longer watch from the shadows. To protect her, to understand her, he would have to reveal more than just his power. He would have to reveal himself. Leora met his gaze, understanding without words that the night had changed everything. The forest had tested her, yes, but it had also brought her to him, and neither of them could ignore the connection that had formed in the heart of darkness. The forbidden forest had grown darker than ever that night. Moonlight barely pierced the thick canopy, and the mist had become a living thing, swirling like smoke around gnarled roots and shadowed hollows. Leora stood at the edge of a small clearing, her hands trembling but her eyes steady. The glow that had followed her for days now hovered closer, revealing itself as a creature of shifting shapes and fierce intelligence. It was no ordinary beast. It was a guardian of the forest, born from the old curse that had haunted these woods for centuries. Behind her, Kalen, the Alpha King, moved silently but fully revealed this time. His cloak rustled softly, and his dark eyes reflected both the pale moonlight and the burden of centuries. He had watched her, guided her, and protected her. But now the danger had grown beyond subtle interference. Kalen understood that he could not shield her from this alone. He needed her courage, her strength, and the trust that had begun to form between them. "You must stand with me," Kalen said quietly, voice steady but firm. "The forest tests more than strength, it tests heart and spirit. You are stronger than you know, Leora, trust yourself." Leora nodded, gripping the branch in her hands. Her fear had not vanished, but the moment she had spent in the forest, guided by Kalen's presence, had strengthened her. She had learned to face shadows, to question her doubts, and to trust herself even when the world seemed bent against her. And now, standing beside Kalen, she felt something else, a quiet courage that came from connection, not solitude. The glowing creature shifted again, its form flickering between human and beast. Its eyes, molten gold and bright with ancient intelligence, studied them both. Kalen stepped forward, his presence commanding yet protective, and Leora felt a strange warmth in the closeness of his shadow. "This is no ordinary test," Kalen said softly. "It seeks to divide us to see if we will falter when faced with fear. But together, we are stronger." The creature lunged suddenly, faster than either of them had expected. Leora raised her branch instinctively, though she barely expected it to do any real harm. Kaelin moved with fluid grace, stepping between her and the shadow, summoning a pulse of wind that threw the creature off balance. But it did not retreat. Its eyes burned with recognition, as if it understood that the night's trial was only beginning. Leora's pulse raced. She could feel the weight of the forest around her, pressing in from every direction. The mist seemed to swirl more violently, wrapping her legs, brushing against her arms, testing her resolve. But instead of fear, she felt determination. She would not flee. She would stand. Not only for herself, but for the strange bond forming between her and Kaelin, a bond that had grown stronger with every peril they had faced together. Kaelin extended his hand, and Leora met it without hesitation. Their fingers brushed, and a subtle warmth passed between them, a quiet acknowledgement of trust and shared purpose. The forest seemed to pause at that gesture, as if it too recognized that the test was not just about survival, but about the strength of connection. The creature lunged again, and this time Kaelin moved to engage it fully. The shadows twisted around him, responding to his command, and a fierce wind swept the clearing. Leora followed instinctively, stepping forward and planting her feet firmly. She raised her branch with both hands, feeling the pulse of energy from Kaelin's presence behind her. "You are ready," Kaelin said softly, almost to himself. "You do not need to fear it." Leora drew a steadying breath. The creature approached again, and this time she did not retreat. She met its gaze, seeing not only danger but also a reflection of the fears she had carried for so long. The fear of being powerless, the fear of abandonment, the fear of not belonging. She raised her branch high, but she also raised her voice. "I am not afraid," she called, her words ringing clear through the forest. "I will not falter." The creature paused, as if startled by her declaration. Its glow flickered, dimming slightly, and for a moment the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Kaelin sensed the shift. Leora's courage, combined with the bond between them, had unsettled the ancient guardian. "Together," Kaelin said, his voice low and commanding. "We face it together." He extended both hands, summoning the subtle, unseen power that had long been part of him but rarely shared. The wind, the mist, and the shadows all responded to his command, creating a protective circle around them. Leora stepped within it, feeling the pulse of energy that connected them both. She no longer felt fear, only the steady rhythm of their combined strength. The creature lunged one final time, but the circle held firm. Kaelin's eyes met Leora's, and she understood what he was asking, not just to fight, but to trust. With a deep breath, she thrust her branch forward, and a surge of energy, drawn from Kaelin's presence and her own resolve, struck the creature. Its form shimmered violently, and then, with a final hiss, it dissolved into mist. Silence followed, heavy and profound. The forest seemed to exhale, releasing the tension that had gripped it for centuries. The mist receded slightly, and the moonlight touched the clearing more fully, illuminating the tired but resolute faces of Leora and Kaelin. "You did well," Kaelin said, voice soft but carrying pride. "You faced what most could not, and you did not falter." Leora's chest heaved with exhaustion and relief. She let her branch fall to the ground and looked at him. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted quietly. "You guided me, protected me." Kaelin shook his head slightly, a rare, almost shy expression crossing his features. "No," he said, "you protected yourself. I only made sure the forest did not take you before you were ready." For a long moment they stood in silence, the bond between them deepened by shared danger and understanding. The centuries that separated them, his long life and her brief mortal one, felt irrelevant in the face of the trust they had forged tonight. Leora looked around the clearing, at the trees that had once seemed hostile but now felt like witnesses to their triumph. "The forest," she said softly, "it's alive. It watches, it tests, and it changes those who enter." Kaelin's eyes darkened, thoughtful. It is a reflection of those who dare to walk its paths. Courage, fear, love, despair, they all leave traces. And tonight it has seen more than most. It has seen you. Leora's eyes met his, and in that gaze she saw centuries of solitude, of pain, of isolation. But she also saw hope, perhaps even redemption. Kaelin had lived as a ruler bound by fear and power, yet in this moment he had shown humanity, vulnerability, care. And in turn, Leora felt a connection she had never imagined possible, a trust that could survive even the deepest darkness. The night slowly softened as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. Pale light spilled through the trees, and the mist began to lift. The forest, once a place of shadows and fear, now seemed alive with quiet approval, a witness to the courage of those who dared face it together. Kaelin stepped closer to Leora. His hand brushed against hers, and a warmth spread through them both, not of magic but of shared understanding. "The forest has tested you," he said, voice low and intimate. "And it has not been easy, but you have proven yourself strong, brave, unyielding. And in doing so, you have proven something to me as well." Leora tilted her head slightly, uncertain. "What is that?" she asked softly. "That even the strongest hearts," Kaelin said, "can learn to trust, to hope, and to love." His eyes softened, the centuries of guarded authority giving way to something raw, real, and unshielded. A silence fell between them, heavy with emotion. Neither spoke, but the connection was undeniable. In the stillness of the forest, amidst the remnants of the shadows and mist, they understood that their bond had been forged in fire and courage. It was not the fleeting connection of convenience or fear. It was something enduring, something that could survive both darkness and dawn. Leora exhaled slowly, letting the tension of the night pass through her. I think I understand," she whispered. "I understand what it means to face fear, and to find strength I never knew I had." Kaelin nodded. "And I understand that even a king, bound by centuries of solitude and command, can find someone who awakens what he thought long dead. Someone who makes him want more than power or fear. Someone worth protecting, worth trusting." The first light of morning fully touched the forest, and the mist lifted like a curtain, revealing the clearing in all its twisted beauty. The shadows had receded, and the ancient curse that had haunted the woods seemed quieter, humbled by the courage of the two who had faced it. Leora looked up at Kaelin, and for the first time she did not see a king cloaked in power and fear. She saw a man, complex, scarred, and real, standing beside her, sharing the weight of the world in a way she had never expected. And in that realization she felt something that had long been foreign to her: hope. Kaelin extended his hand, and Leora took it without hesitation. Together they walked from the clearing, the forest around them still alive but no longer threatening. The night had tested them, the curse had challenged them, and the forest had witnessed the birth of a bond that could not be undone. Yet even as they left the heart of the shadows behind, the echo of a distant howl reminded them that the world beyond the forest was vast and uncertain. Challenges would come, as they always did, but for the first time they would face them together, stronger, braver, and united by trust and shared courage. And in that moment, under the soft glow of dawn and the quiet approval of the forest, Kaelin and Leora understood that they had not just survived, they had transformed. And their story, though no longer of fear alone, had only truly begun.